officers of the Charter Trustees, please be upstanding to receive the Worshipful Mayor of Bournemouth.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First thing on the agenda is apologies. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Mayor, I can read out the apologies. We have received apologies from Councillors Hazel Allen, Marcus Andrews, Simon Bull, Bobby Dove, George Farquhar, Duane Farr, Nicola Green, May Haynes, Nigel Hedges, Mohan Anga, Andy Jones, Lisa Lewis, Lisa Northover, Chris Rigby, Roberta Rocco and Kieran Wilson. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Second item on the agenda is any declarations of interest.
We've received none to date.
Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a declaration of interest, but apologies were also received from Councillor Mellor.
Thank you. Can I now move to item 3, confirmation and any minutes and matters arising? Anybody got any issues with the last meeting? If not, if you have, I'm going to shoot you. But, no? Super. Yep, thank you. Is it okay that I sign those minutes and we, yep, thank you. Right, item 4 is the Charter Mayor's report. Does anybody want to know what I've been doing? yeah. It's really interesting being the mayor. I was saying to Dave a few minutes ago that how much you don't realise until you actually do it, how much respect, I wouldn't say the word reverence, but this how much respect and people have for the office of the mayor. Wherever I've been, along with June, people are very respectful, very helpful, delighted to see you there as the mayor. And it's really, really nice. You've got to be careful it doesn't go to your head. Never confuse the man with a job. But it's really an interesting few weeks that we've had. The first, just after I became mayor, we had obviously the Jubilee weekend. And that was really exciting, some really interesting street parties, people were in a good mood, really pleasant atmospheres. The most difficult one I had to do was try and light the beacon. If anybody's seen the video, it's, you know, and I mean, my job was just to turn the gas on, you know, really, really high-powered stuff. But and then they had this clicker to light. So then they said, right, do a countdown, because we were trying to time it with Poole and Christchurch to light at the same time. And then as I counted down from 10, tell you what, there was an huge number of people there. I was quite surprised at the number of people that were there just to see a beacon being lit. So I counted down from 10 to 0, and then it was, right, light, and click, click, click. Eventually it lit, and then we had a lovely fireworks display. A couple of highlights of the, well, they've all been highlights, but some stand out more than others, is one, we went to the rehab centre, which is just around the corner from here in Braidley Road, where people are treated for alcohol or drug addiction. And it's really fascinating to see how people have responded to those addictions and have got their lives back on track. They're obviously selective in who they take, because they don't want to waste their money or time on people who aren't, do not wish to lose their addiction. But we listened to 4 people who, a young lady who had alcohol addiction, and a man from Scotland, from Glasgow, who had been a drug addict. And it's really moving, is no other better way to describe it, to hear that what they've been through in trying to overcome their addictions. And it takes a real strength of character and determination to do that. And it was really fascinating to see them do that. The other interesting ones we've been to is difficult to put into words. Some of the ones I went to one yesterday called Crumbs, where they try and teach disabled people, either physical or mentally disabled people, to do catering. And I said, what age group do they do? And they say anything from 18 to, and they have a 70-year-old there. Helping them, they're using catering by cooking in the kitchen or baking in the bakery to help them try and be more not useful members of society, to try and give them a purpose in life, to try and give them some, because some of them, quite a lot of them, suffer from low self-esteem. And by teaching them and trying to help them to do physical tasks, again, it was moving. It really is, you've got Down syndrome people to other people who've been in accidents. It really is interesting and quite moving. And again, it's quite overwhelming to see when you walk in with these chains on, how people are respectful, they enjoy and love to see the mayor. And it's almost, I wouldn't say it's royalty, but it's almost, reverence in one way, in that they're so pleased to have a visit of the mayor of Bournemouth. I mean, next year it'll be somebody else wearing these chains, but the office will remain, and it's quite a fascinating journey. So far, I'm enjoying it immensely. It's good fun. It's still difficult to get used to be chauffeured around. And Carl and Jeff are really fantastic macers. Jeff always puts the badge on the front of the bonnet. Carl doesn't bother. And of course, the number of people is a little sucker pad that sticks on the front bonnet with the badge, the Bournemouth badge. And the number of people who stare at you as you know, who on earth's in that car, or who does that car belong to? That's quite interesting. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's good fun. It's interesting. The most we've had so far is 5 engagements in a day. Somebody, I think it was Carl, told me the other day that on Christmas Day, I've got at least 3 Christmas dinners. So I'm not going to do the Vicar of Dilby. I'm not going to have stuff myself with flipping sprouts. I can tell you that now. Because the after effect, the sprouts, is something to behold. But yeah, it's good fun, and I'm really pleased and privileged and honoured. And as having spoken to all of the ex-councillors, I can see some of them in the room, Eddie, Sue and Derek. It's been a really and Lawrence, sorry Lawrence, I missed you out then. They've all said the same thing, and your turn soon, Phil, is, of course, Anne, sorry Anne, I apologise, Anne. Yeah. Yes. It's, but every ex-mayor has said to me the same thing. You know, it's really an interesting and fascinating period while you're in the office. And there actually is quite a lot of good that you can achieve, you know. So thank you for voting for me, and thank you for allowing me to hold this office, which is really interesting. And as I say, special thanks to Carl, special thanks to Karen, who's been really, really helpful, and to Matt, our accountant. Thank you very much. Right, that's enough of me rabbiting about that. Yeah, Dave's shaking his head, he's agreeing with me. So, talking of Matt, we'll move on to item 5, and the Charter Trustees Internal Audit Report. Please, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Charter Trustees. So this is the annual internal audit report, which is one of 2 reports that I will present tonight, which leads on to the formal sign-off of the annual governance and accountability return, which I will refer to as the AGAR form, which we will look at and hopefully approve later on in the agenda today. So the internal audit report focuses on a number of key areas which are linked to the objectives of the AGAR return in terms of governance. You'll find on page 15 of the report pack the summary findings of that internal audit in regards to the AGAR objectives, and page 16 then details some of the findings of that internal audit report. Now on page 16 there's a number of findings from that internal audit exercise. I'm not going to go through every single one, but I'll mention some of the more noteworthy points. So there were a number of findings in regards to the financial regs and the expenditure of the Charter Trustees, which mostly have been dealt with subsequently. One area just to highlight is in regards to the current insurance arrangements. So at the moment we're operating under contingency arrangements with the BCP cancel insurance premium. So there is a risk potentially that will be pulled for the Charter Trustees, so we need to look to get cover for the Charter Trustees in their own right. So we're working with the insurance team to sort that out, and we'll bring a report back to the Charter Trustees to give you assurance that steps have been taken to put that into place. Another area that's been flagged within the internal audit is the ability to demonstrate value for money in terms of the expenditure of the Charter Trustees. As you know, we're a public organisation, we're publicly funded, so we need to demonstrate steps in terms of how we spend our money and how we can demonstrate value for money. So we're going to bring something back to the Charter Trustees to tweak the financial regulations so that we can build that in going forward. Lastly, another area just to highlight is in regards to the remit of the Charter Trustees and in regards to how we deal with new events. So the internal auditors have flagged that within the Charter Trustee Handbook, it states that the Trust ensures the continuation of the civic, historic and ceremonial traditions of the former borough. And it goes on to say that, however, it's unclear how the Charter Trustees would support new activities. So the proposal is to add to the handbook as such, and new events which are not inconsistent with those traditions. So I'll pause there, Mr. Mayor, and take any questions.
Trustees, are there any questions which you would to raise with Matt? Councillor Phillips.
Yes, that you're saying you'd like to add further things to the listing. Could you give an example of what that could be? Thank you.
I think, as Matt has indicated, this is around the actual role and scope of the Charter Trustees, and fundamentally your role is to ensure that you uphold the traditions and historic heritage of the mayoralty. The issue that the internal auditors have identified is there could be additional issues that you, or events that you might want to do, fund, whatever it might be. We don't have examples at the moment, but it's just acknowledging that if there are new events that you want to do as Charter Trustees, that they're not at variance with your tradition and historic responsibilities. Hopefully that clarifies it.
Thank you, Karen. Any other questions? Philip. Yep.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really supportive of that amendment because the wording as it stands is a little unclear. So giving that flexibility for the future, I think, is really welcome. I'd perhaps suggest going a little bit further. The proposed new wording and new events could potentially limit us to events rather than activities. So maybe if we would say new events and activities which are not inconsistent with those traditions, that there are many functions of the mayoralty quite outside of just attending events, and again we'd probably want that flexibility so long as it's consistent with the traditions in the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No problem with that, is it? Yeah, that's a good idea, Philip. Is everybody else okay with that rewording? Okay. Thank you. Therefore, if there's no other questions, can I seek approval for Matt's report? Agreed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this is the outturn report for 21-22, which feeds into the AGAR return again in regards to the accounting statement. So all the numbers you find in the outturn report are reflected in the AGAR return that we'll look to approve later. Appendix A to that report sets out in detail all the expenditure and income for the year of the Charter Trustees. The overall outturn position was an underspend of 26,878, which, as we've been reporting throughout the year, is principally due to the pandemic, which has hampered some of the ability in being able to carry out some of the activities that were planned. So that underspend will be added into the total reserves. So we started the year at just over 40,000 and we end the year just short of 67,000. And you'll see in figure 1 of that report, that represents around 45% of the total 22-23 precept. So the reserves are fairly high, but they're for obvious reasons. Obviously, we want to ensure that we use those appropriately, be that to support additional activities or to be utilised to offset future precept demands, should we wish. So I'll stop there, Mr Mayor. Take any questions.
So I think what it's showing is obviously we've got a healthy budget, but obviously the pandemic has contributed towards that. I can rest the trustees' assurance that I will spend it quite well, so that when the new mayor comes in, there'll be nothing. Are there any questions on Matthew's report? There's some nice holidays in the Caymans, you know. Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, in light of that last comment, I think I'd like to remove the word "and activities" from the previous. But no, in all seriousness, and this is a decision for a later date, but the consequence of the underspend of this year's budget is that, as it mentions in the report, we now have relatively high reserves within the budget compared to what is recommended that we should have. So we're now running at about 45% compared to the year spend, and the recommendation was always at around 20%. So it does, which is a healthy position, and it's always good to have reserves. But in light of the difficulties that the whole world is facing around cost of living, it may throw a conversation towards the end of the year when we're looking at next year's budget, whether we might want to even decrease the precept from next year in light of the fact that we've got healthy reserves, we can afford to, and people need every help they can get at the moment. But a conversation for another day, but I thought I'd cede the thought. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, that's a good point, Councillor Broadhead. We have discussed it internally, whether we should look to see if you cannot just keep on accumulating those amounts, and whether we should look at altering the budget. Mrs Tompkins.
Can I just highlight, picking up the point that Councillor Broadhead has made, if you go back to the internal audit report, that very issue is raised around what policy you would want to use going forward for your reserves, whatever level they are. So if I'm looking at Matt, that will probably be something we can pick up through the budget workshop, which will be held later in the year, and then you can establish how you want to deal with it in the future. Thank you.
So the answer to Councillor Broadhead's question is yes, we will certainly bear that in mind. If there's any other sorry, yeah, David.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, it's just a quick comment on the budget outturn. Obviously, it's a shame that we couldn't have the activity during the year to actually sort of spend the money that had been precepted, and I hope this year that the activity levels will sort of warrant the precept that's been levied on our taxpayers. And I note your comments earlier about the Jubilee event, which hopefully, I'm sure that sort of incurred some expenditure as well to do that. I would have suggested, if finances were tight, that it was good that you had a video there, because I understand that you've been framed to pay about £250 for videos to be able to show on the TV, and you might be able to supplement the income of the Charter Trustees by selling the video of that. But fortunately, I don't think we're going to be that tight with the budget next year.
Thank you, David. Very kind comments. Any other comments? Can I move then that we accept Matthew's report? Great. Thank you. Please, Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is section 1 of 2 parts to the AGAR return that needs to be approved tonight, so we can meet our statutory deadline to publish the AGAR by the end of June. That then goes on to the website, and there'll be a window for public inspection, and then subsequently we have an external audit of the AGAR return. So the annual governance statement effectively mirrors the internal audit report that I presented earlier. You'll see that although the internal audit found a number of areas of concern in terms of the internal controls, they weren't found to be substantial enough to change the annual governance conclusion, and you'll see on that conclusion everything has been ticked as yes in terms of the objectives. So if the Charter Trustees are in agreement, I will ask at the end of the meeting for the Chairman and Clerk to sign off that statement. So I'll stop there, Mr. Mayor. Take any questions.
Any questions on Matthew's report? No, happy for you to sign. Are you happy for me to sign? Great stuff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the section 2 of the AGAR return in regards to the accounts, and again this mirrors the outturn report that I previously presented. The only figure on there that isn't in the outturn report is the valuation of the civic regalia. So this is in line with the insurance cover for those assets, which stands at 646,000, and we refresh that valuation every 5 years. So you'll see last year's valuation is the same as this year's. So if Charter Trustees are in agreement, it'll be myself as responsible finance officer and the chairman to sign that statement tonight. Thank you.
Are the trustees in agreement with that? Yep. Thank you. We now move on to item 9, the protocol for display of mayoral portraits. And I call upon Karen Tompkins to give an update on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you can see, there's no report, there's no written document attached with this. It's an opportunity to bring forward to the Charter Trustees, by way of introduction, the need for you to consider a protocol for the display of mayoral portraits. It's just to kick off that discussion, really. I would highlight, Mr. Mayor, and you're aware of this, and I understand you may have some proposals, is this is one of a number of operational issues that the Charter Trustees may need to consider. So I'll stop there. I'll stop there and hand over to you, because I know that you've got some updates that you want to make. Happy to answer any questions.
As Ms Tompkins has said, it's been a difficult 3 years for all of us, and we've not been able, the mayoral office has not been able to do some of the stuff which it would like to have done. For instance, these chains need updating with the names of previous mayors, the number of portraits along the corridor, etc., etc. So bearing that in mind, I am proposing, and Dave will just second me in a second, the establishment of a civic working group to look at all of these issues. We need to establish and try and maintain the office and history of the mayor going forward, in terms of now that we're a trustee as opposed to the old Bournemouth Council. And they may have similar problems in Poole, I don't know. I've not spoken to Councillor Trent. So what I'm proposing, and Dave will add a few words in a moment, is the establishment of a civic working group, a task and finish group, if you like, to look at all of these issues which are being raised. And I'll hand over to Dave, and he'll expand on it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as the Mayor has said, we were formed, sort of like 3-4 years ago, and we've not really been able to get in the building to do anything here since. We've had 2 years of COVID. We've now got a building site for a civic centre, so it's been very difficult to get anything done. There are quite a few things that we've been pushing back. The recognition of the civic flag, for example, the Bournemouth coat of arms, the portraits that need to be done, the restoration of the chains and the adding of the new ones, the putting up of the names on the members' boards, etc. They've not been done now for 3 or 4 years. So I think the best way forward, as the Mayor suggests, is to have a small working group so that we can sit down go through all these, and then come back to you at the next Charter Trustees meeting with a row of suggestions. There's no point sitting here tonight debating each one of these individually when nobody really knows what any opportunities will be. So my suggestion will be, along with the mayors, that we do a working group, we form a working group, and we go through all these, and then we can come back to you and say, right, this is what we recommend, do you agree? Or at the same time, when you get the agenda papers, if you have any other ideas, there's also an idea for everyone else. Or if you have ideas preceding that, send them in. Send them in to myself or to the mayor, and we can put them through when we start doing the working group. So that will be my proposal, Mr. Mayor, and hopefully you'll be happy with that.
I am indeed. We have discussed it. The working group, as I say, will be a task and finish group. It will obviously include myself as the mayor, David Kelsey as the deputy mayor, the budget signatories, which are Lawrence Williams and Malcolm Davis, John Beasley, who is the budget signatory, also council and filer. We will also look to, if necessary and as required as we're going forward, if we need to bring in extra skills, we will do that, which are available within the council. It is a proposal which I believe is probably the best, or we believe is probably the best way forward. We cannot discuss tonight whether we should have a Bournemouth flag or whether we should do this or do that. I think it's something which, as a working group, we can work on and then bring those proposals, as David has said, forward to the trustees to see whether, and then we can discuss them then. But until we have some firm proposals, which is best to be worked through with myself and other existing or previous mayors, I think that's the best way forward for us. I'm seeking approval from yourselves as trustees that we do this. There is a lot of stuff to do which we need to sort out going forward, and I would like to seek approval amongst the trustees tonight to set up that working group. Councillor Phillips.
Again, I just wanted for the record just to say that a portrait is already in the building and is in storage. I just wanted that recorded, please.
Okay, thank you.
And it was with the knowledge of all of the senior members of staff.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to ask a very simple question. I assume that we still have the protocols that were used by the old Bournemouth Borough Council, and we can use those as a starting position. Thank you.
Yes, that's exactly our position, which we will, as our baseline, if you like, to work on.
Just to highlight, as the Mayor's indicated, I think the working group proposal gives the opportunity to shape those issues with a smaller group of Charter Trustees, rather than sometimes the difficulties that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor has highlighted and bring them cold to a complete formal meeting. So this, you're absolutely right, Councillor Anderson, this is about looking at what happened in Bournemouth. Are those protocols that we still wish to use? If they are, that's a quick win and we can tick those and put those in place. But there are some other issues that we do need to add to that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Filer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I completely agree it's a good idea because, first of all, decisions made by a large committee like this are never any good. You're going to have lots of different opinions, and it's very difficult to make a decision without a paper. And if the working group comes forward with a paper, then people will be able to agree or disagree with it, but at least you've got something to debate. And you mentioned tonight things that I hadn't even thought about, like the flag, and that's something that hasn't crossed my mind. And this is our opportunity. It's the first opportunity since the Charter Trustees were formed for us to set the future. And the decisions that we make this year will be what carries on in the future and on and on and on until there are no more trustees. So, yeah, I'm completely in agreement with that, and I think it's very important that we get it absolutely right and have the discussions, bring forward a paper. If people disagree, well, then that's a question for debate. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned in your introduction about what the Pool Charter Trustees were doing. I was at Pool Charter Trustees last night, and they've also approved the formation of a civic working group to work on these issues and bring them to the full Charter Trustees. And just for information, the Pool Charter Trustees Civic Working Group will have the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, obviously. We'll also have up to 2 past mayors within the working group who are currently existing Charter Trustees, as well as obviously the Honorary Clerk, either the Head or Deputy Head of Democratic Services, and the Civic Team Support. And they're looking at meeting up to 4 times a year to do that. So just to give you some sort of possible framework, for how we might go through with the Bournemouth Charter Trustees.
It's a good idea. Thanks very much. Thank you. Can I put that proposal to you that we set up a working group? I need the approval of you as trustees for us to move ahead with that. Do I have agreement for us to do that? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, sorry, it's me again. I just think that as Charter Trustees, we can't let today go by without thanking Karen, who will be leaving this council so soon. I wasn't expecting us to be saying this tonight, but Karen has been the most fantastic, dedicated worker to this Charter Trustees along with Richard, but she's been doing it longer. I can't remember being a councillor when she wasn't around, and for me it's really sad that we won't be seeing you around, Karen. Your wisdom and your patience, enormous patience, sometimes in the face of huge adversity. She's absolutely amazing. She keeps her calm. She's wise counsel always. And I'd like us all to thank her very much indeed for everything that she's done for us.
And if anyone wants to contribute to a taxi, because there's no train, so she's never going to get home to Weymouth tonight.
Can I, I'm not normally lost words, but can I just say thank you, Councillor Fowler, for your very kind words, and I really appreciate the kind wishes I've had from all the Charter Trustees. I have to be honest, I'm looking forward to the retirement. I am going to miss the people, but I'm definitely looking forward to a new chapter, so thank you very much.
Therefore, I will now close the meeting. Can you switch?